stripes official. Taking off like a missile. Yeah, I'm validated, but it ain't about no people. Ain't no number two. What it look like a pencil. God drew on the plan, then gave me the stencil. Slide, you know I run with the pride. All of my homies some lines, all of them listen to God. Never gonna be my demise, even with pressure applied, even with...
Hey guys, this video is Zach teaching the last lesson of our Exodus series. I hope you've been blessed by it. Today, Zach's going to unpack what it means that God shows us the way, but then also has stood in our gap. So please just stay tuned. It's only 4.5 minutes long. I trust that you can sit through a 4.5 minute video. We love you guys. Here's Zach.
What is up, College Park students? Pastor Zach here, and hey, I got a question for you. Have you ever been in a group project? Here's what I mean by group project. That your teacher assigned you a assignment, a project, but you do all the work. Or maybe if you're not the person that does all the work, you're one of those people. You know what I'm talking about. One of those people who is assigned the task, but you love working with this one person because you benefit from their work. This is what group projects are. You're either the doer or you're the watcher. And one of the reasons you're the watcher is because the person who's doing may not trust you with doing any of the project. Well, in our story today, what we see is this reality. Jesus showed us the way, and he stood in our gap. Jesus showed us the way, and he stood in our gap. See, where we pick up in the story of Exodus is that Moses is wandering with the Israelites through the wilderness, and he's got them to this place called Mount Sinai, and God's glory is around this mountain, and they're around this mountain, they see God's glory, and Moses goes up the mountain. He represents the people of Israel to God, and he talks to God. And God shows him his glory. Could you imagine you're at the bottom of the mountain and you're looking up and there's this cloud. There's this cloud above the mountain, and you know this guy, your leader, is up there, but you can't see him and you can't hear him, and you're now not allowed to go even touch the mountain. Moses represented, he stood in the Israelites' gap. He represented Israel to God. Then he comes back down the mountain with these tablets, and on these tablets were the commands of God. It was the 10 Commandments. It was the way to follow God. He stood in their gap, and he showed them the way. Moses is this picture of Jesus that's coming thousands of years later, and he came to earth and he showed us the way. He lived a beautifully perfect life. He showed mercy. He showed grace. He showed kindness. Then he took a death that he didn't deserve. He represented us. He stood on the cross, nailed to it, and said, God, I know they deserve death. I know they deserve punishment. I know they deserve what I'm receiving right now, but I'm standing in their gap. I'm dying for them. I'm representing them. Jesus stood in our gap, and he showed us the way. He died so we may live, and when we live, we follow him. We do whatever he says. He's the king of our world. He gives us commandments. He shows us how to live. So the question for you is, are you willing to follow him? Are you willing to know that his ways are better than your ways? Because we're not obeying him so that he will love us. We obey him because he's already stood in the gap for us. That he stood in our gap. He died in our place. He was crucified for our sins. He stood in the gap for you and for me. Because he died on that cross, and because he rose from the grave, we do not have to represent ourselves. When we meet God, we do not have to represent ourselves. Jesus represented us for us. So, because he stood in your gap, are you willing to follow him with everything in your life? Moses went to the mountain. He represented the people of Israel for them. Then he came down with these laws to live under God's command. So here's the question for you. Here's the question for us. Are we willing to lay down our own thrones, our own personal agendas, our own plans, and are we willing to follow him? You got to answer that question for yourself. Maybe you're listening to this and you're not a Christian. Are you willing to say no to yourself, to deny yourself, and to follow God? You don't earn God's love because He's already stood in the gap for you. You simply trust Him and follow Him as your King. That is your question. Are you willing to follow God?
Even with